What's up, everyone? We are back at it today with a Monday NCAA basketball slate for March 4th. We are going to be posting daily NCAA basketball videos all the way through March Madness, so hit that like button to keep these picks coming and subscribe so you don't miss our daily uploads. These picks are sponsored by StumpTheSpread.com, where you can get all of our best picks and predictions on every major sport. While you were here, don't forget to comment below with any questions, opinions, or bets on today's college basketball or NBA slates. I read and respond to every single comment. Now let's dive into our first game of the day, Eastern Washington versus Sacramento State. Eastern Washington comes into this game playing relatively well. They've won 3 in a row. Their recent win over Montana State was an exciting one that went into overtime. Not usually what's going on here with the Eastern Washington Eagles. This team has been dominant in the Big Sky all season long. They have a 14-3 conference record. That had to be a bit of a scare game for them. Montana State is not an amazing team, so that's clearly not a game they would have expected to be close. So I almost want to put this in the bounce back category, although they did lose at Montana State earlier this season, so maybe that squad is just a bad matchup for them. Earlier this season, they took on Sacramento State and came away with an 87-61 blowout win, so that's pretty encouraging. This squad puts up a ton of offense. Their rebounding isn't great, but when you're averaging over 80 points a game, you can get away with a lot of mistakes. Their defense is not amazing, but it had been good in the 2 games prior to that overtime win over Montana State. Cedric Coward is an absolute monster, putting up 15 points per game on almost 57% shooting from the field. Those are not numbers that you're going to see every day. This team has just been comfortably the best squad in the conference all season long, and they are going to be gearing up for a big conference tournament run. Sacramento State, on the other hand, comes into this game. They're fresh off back-to-back wins, so they've been playing relatively well. They just won against Portland State, not a very good team. Sacramento State, the Hornets, they've been in the bottom of the Big Sky pretty much all season long. They only have a 4-13 conference record. Their best player is Duncan Powell, but he's only averaging 12 points per game. This squad cannot score the ball. They're averaging only 65 points per game. They're ranked around 400th in the nation in offensive production. Pretty terrible. Their defense isn't very good. They're allowing around 70 points per game despite trying to play at a very slow pace. To be honest, it's pretty shocking that they're coming off back-to-back wins in this one. This squad has not been very good at home. They're 5-6 against the spread on their home court, so not that terrible, but we're really looking at Eastern Washington on the road in this one. Their trends are fantastic. Eastern Washington is 13-5 against the spread when they're playing away from home. They've already had a dominant win in that matchup, and that's why we're going to take the Eagles -7.5 in this one. Playing on the road, I think they get the job done in this game. They're going to want to go into their conference tournament playing well. They're going to want to get right in this one, and this is the perfect opportunity. Next up, we're looking at Alcorn State heading to Texas Southern. Alcorn State comes in this game fresh off a 6th straight win. They've been playing some of their best ball of the season lately. They're all the way up in 4th place, tied for 3rd place actually in the SWAC right now. This squad hasn't exactly been lighting things on fire through the course of the season, but lately they're playing much better. Their defense has shown great improvement recently. They're way under their season average over their last several games. This team has traveled relatively well. Jeremiah Kendall is a monster, leading the way with 16 points on almost 53% shooting from the field. That's a number you can definitely get behind. The rebounding has not been all that great, really, but against Prairie View in their last game, they did manage to win the battle of the boards. They shot the ball relatively well. They got to the free throw line a lot. We like how Alcorn State is playing right now. Texas Southern comes into this game playing some of their best ball of the season also. These 4 wins have all been very convincing. Their last loss was against Grambling, which is the best team in the conference. The Tigers are really going to want to have a shot, and they seem to have a reasonable shot of making a deep conference tournament run. Maybe they can come out on top and get that automatic NCAA bid. PJ Henry is a monster, leading the team in both scoring and assists and field goal percentage. This squad has been playing much better offense recently, playing way better than their season average. Their rebounding numbers have been up. Their defense has been much better. Right now, they're just playing great. They're playing their best ball of the season. They're only 4-4 against the spread at home, but that's not going to slow us down. We're going to take Texas Southern at home -4.5 in this one. They got the win in this matchup 72-61 earlier in the season, and they were playing at Alcorn State. Playing at home in this one, I definitely like the Texas Southern Tigers. Next up, we're headed to the Southland. We've got Lamar going on the road to take on Texas A&M Commerce. Lamar comes into this game playing relatively well. They just won against Northwestern State. The Cardinals haven't been able to break into the top echelon of the Southland. They've got a pretty decent team. They're very good offensively. They're good on the boards. Their defense isn't anything to write home about. I think that's kind of been what's held them back. They also don't have a great primary scorer. Terry Anderson's 12 points per game aren't really going to impress me too much. They played a very close game against McNeese lately. They're really doing everything they can to try and compete for the Southland crown, but at 10-6, they're just not getting the job done. Texas A&M Commerce comes into this game fresh off a win over HCU, but that is not very impressive. Taking down one of the worst teams in the Southland isn't really going to get me all excited. This squad is only putting up 72 points per game. Their defense is terrible, and the real concern is their rebounding. Their rebounding is absolutely terrible. They're under 400th. They're ranked 416th in the domination on the boards, that's not the kind of numbers that's going to get it done. They do have a go-to scorer in Kalen Williams, but can he really carry this squad to wins? So far, it's not really looking like that, especially against the upper teams in the conference. Earlier this season against Lamar, they went on the road and got blown out 76-65. We are going to go with Lamar on the road in this one. They're -4.5. I think that'll be all right. The Cardinals are 7-7 against the spread playing on the road, so we know they can handle being on the road, especially against conference opponents. Give me Lamar in this one. Staying in the South Lane, we've got Nicholls heading to Northwestern State. Nicholls comes into this game fresh off a blowout loss at the hands of McNeese. McNeese is the best team in the conference, so losing them isn't really an embarrassment. Nicholls has been in the upper echelon of the conference this season, although we're in the Southland, so let's not freak out. This isn't an amazing team, but they've done some good work recently. Just McNeese has been holding them down. This squad is putting up around 74 points per game, relatively good. Their defense has been a bit better lately, but it's still a major concern. Their rebounding, however, is pretty decent. We see Nicholls very good on the boards against some opponents. Obviously, against teams like McNeese, that's not going to be the case, but they've done a good job beating up on the bottom of the conference. And that's kind of what we see here going against Northwestern State. The Demons have not really had a great season. They come into this one fresh off a relatively competitive loss to Lamar, but they've lost 2 of their last 3. They lost at Nicholls earlier this season. It was a fairly competitive game, but Northwestern State lost on the boards. They lost this game despite shooting 47% from the three-point line. That is not a good sign. If you're going to be losing when you're absolutely shooting the lights out, you probably don't have much of a chance in that matchup. Nicholls is actually very good against the spread on the road, going 9-6 away from home this season. Northwestern State is 5-5 against the spread at home, so nothing too special. We're going to take Nicholls -1.5. This is basically a pick'em game. Give me the Nicholls Colonels in this one. Next up, we've got Southeast Louisiana heading to Incarnate Word. Southeast Louisiana comes into this game fresh off of a tough loss. They lost to AMCC. Losing to Texas A&M Corpus Christi is not a real embarrassment, though. They've clearly been the second best team in the Southland all season long. Southeast Louisiana has been struggling offensively. They have a hard time coming up with enough points, but their defense is very good, and they have shown the ability to put up points depending on what opponent they're going against. Nick Caldwell is a solid scoring option. This team can be decent on the boards, and earlier this season they did get the win over Incarnate Word, who comes into this game fresh off another loss. This squad has now lost 5 in a row. They're one of the worst teams in the entire Southland. Right now they're actually holding down the very bottom spot. This squad does not play any defense. That's been their big problem. They're allowing nearly 80 points per game. They gave up 87 their last time out to lowly New Orleans. This squad is just not having a good time. They don't have the defensive mindset. They really don't have enough scoring either. Their rebounding is mediocre. There's not a whole lot of positives to find about this team. They haven't really even managed to stay attached to the rest of the conference. They're just getting blown out night after night. We are going to go with Southeast Louisiana on the road in this one. They're -4.5, but Southeast Louisiana is 8-7 against the spread on the road, and we see Incarnate Word only 4-6 against the spread at home. So this is going to be a spot on a short slate. We're going with Southeast Louisiana. We're heading to MEAC in this next one. We've got Delaware State against Howard. Delaware State comes in this game fresh off a win. They took down Norfolk State. That's the best team in the conference. That is a huge win for this Delaware State squad. This kind of came out of nowhere. They won by 14 points, so an absolute blowout. They won by really shooting the lights out. They shot 45% from 3, almost 54% from the field overall. They didn't win the rebounding battle or anything like that. They did get to the line a little bit more, but really this was just a dominant performance that pretty much came out of nowhere. Delaware State has been middle of the road all season long. Their defense is not that great. Their offense is not that great. Moratz Robinson is a solid scoring option, but generally this team just hasn't been anything to write home about. But they just got that amazing win. Now they're going to have to try to back it up against Howard. The Bison come into this game fresh off a 3rd straight win. They're only a single loss back of Norfolk State for the top spot in the conference, so they're going to be looking to compete for that with a game against Norfolk State coming up. So this is a little bit of a look-ahead spot here, but I think more importantly, this could be a letdown spot for Delaware State. Howard has been a better offensive team. They're better on the boards, and they did win in this matchup earlier this season. Going on the road to get a 4-point victory. We're actually going to go with Howard -4.5 in this one. The Bison aren't amazing against the spread at home, going only 4-5-1 against the spread on their home court, but I think they find a way to get this one done against a Delaware State team that really doesn't have a lot to play for at this point in the season, and coming off a huge win like that is never a good spot to back an underdog team. So we're taking Howard -4.5 in this one. Next up, we've got some conference tournament play coming for you guys. We've got Queens University heading to Florida Gulf Coast as part of the A-Sun Conference Tournament. Queens comes into into this game fresh off a crazy win at home against Kennesaw State. The Royals put up 91 points in that game, well above their season average. The rebounding has been much better. A lot of their numbers, though, come from playing at a pretty quick pace, kind of a staple we see in the A-Sun. AJ McKee is a monster. Deontay Malbury is a monster. This squad's going to put up some points. They're going to get up and down, but we're a little bit worried about them in this matchup. They just lost at Florida Gulf Coast 90-81 only a few days ago. We see the Florida Gulf Coast Eagles coming into this game fresh off a third straight win. They just took down Jacksonville in a weirdly low-scoring performance. They took down North Florida, which is a pretty solid win. And before that was their win over Queens. The Eagles actually do play some defense. Their rebounding isn't anything to write home about, and their scoring is a little bit below what you would expect to see in the A-Sun. But this team has been winning some games lately. They gave Kennesaw State a run for their money. They lost by only 1 to Stetson, who's a very good team. So I think we see Florida Gulf Coast play well in this one. Queens is only 5-10-1 against the spread on the road. That is a terrible and very concerning number. Florida Gulf Coast is 6-4 against the spread at home, and we're going to back the Florida Gulf Coast Eagles -4.5 here in the A-Sun tournament. Next up, we're staying in the A-Sun tournament. We've got the Jacksonville Dolphins going on the road to take on Kennesaw State. Jacksonville comes into this one fresh off back-to-back losses, that very low-scoring loss to Florida Gulf Coast, and then before that, a pretty lopsided loss against Stetson. Robert McRae V is a very solid scoring option, but this team is only putting up 70 points per game. Their rebounding is decent. Their ball movement, though, is absolutely terrible. Their defense is not very good, and against Kennesaw State, they could be in a weird spot. Kennesaw State is one of those offense-first teams from the A-Sun. Their defense is not very good at all, but they are going to light up the scoreboard. They're going to crash the boards. Terrell Burden is an absolute monster. He's putting up almost 17 points and 6 assists per game. Those are some pretty big numbers. We see Kennesaw State at home is only -3.5 in this one. Go ahead and give me the Owls, even though they're only 3-7 against the spread at home. Jacksonville on the road, they are only 4-11 against the spread this season. That's a terrible number. We like Kennesaw State at home a lot in this one. Next up, getting into some power conference games, we've got Duke going on the road to take on NC State. This is one of the last 2 conference games Duke has before the conference tournament will start. Right now we see them 1 game back of North Carolina, who they will be taking on in their last game of the season. This is a massive look-ahead spot for Duke, so that's a pretty big concern. NC State is +5.5 points in this game. They come into it not doing too great, though. They're coming off back-to-back road losses, losing at Florida State and at number 9 UNC. Not really disappointing losses necessarily, but I do think they wish they would have kept things a little bit closer against Florida State. The Wolfpack is going to have a very hard time making the NCAA tournament. They need a win like this absolutely desperately. They're 8-8 against the spread playing at home. This squad is pretty decent on the defensive end of the court. DJ Home is an absolute monster scoring the ball. This is really a scary look ahead spot for Duke. I'm not 100% sure which way to go on this one. I don't think I'll actually be betting this game, although I will be watching it. It should be an exciting one. The question is, will Duke have a letdown here? I think they're definitely better than this 5.5 point spread. I think we're going to go ahead and take NC State at home, though. I think they find a way to keep this close in what is pretty much a rivalry game. Duke is in something of a letdown spot and a look ahead spot. They're coming off a massive blowout win over Virginia. I think we see them have a little bit of a letdown. Maybe they win this game and it's very, very close, but I'm definitely taking NC State in the points here if you're forcing me to bet this game. Next up, we've got the Texas Longhorns heading to Baylor. We've got a Big 12 showdown here. Texas comes into this game fresh off of back-to-back wins. They won against Oklahoma State and at Texas Tech. They're playing pretty well right now, but they are going to have to take on an elite opponent in this one. The Longhorns are a solid defensive team. Their rebounding can be pretty good. Their offense gets the job done. Max Asmus is a monster, but they haven't really shown me they have what it takes to hold on against some of the best teams in the conference. Over their recent schedule, they lost against Iowa State, they lost at Houston in an absolute blowout, and then they got blown out at Kansas. So now they have to go to Baylor. Are they really going to be able to turn things around against such an elite opponent? Baylor comes into this game in a little bit of a letdown spot, although this is a rivalry game, kind of, so I'm not too worried about that. Their last time out, Baylor blew out Kansas. We predicted that one. Kansas was a little bit shorthanded in that game, though, so I'm not going to really throw a ticker tape parade for Baylor, but they are one of the best teams in the nation. They're not going to be finishing atop the Big 12 in the regular season, but they'll have their chances in the Big 12 conference tournament. Baylor's putting up over 80 points per game. They're only allowing 70. Their defense is very good. They're good on the boards. They've got length and athleticism. Baylor is a startling 9-5-1 against the spread at home, and we're playing in the Big 12. That's pretty impressive. Texas is only 4-5 against the spread on the road. Give me Baylor -7 at home in this one. That's all the games we have time for today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to comment below with any questions or comments about these picks or today's slate, and click the link in the description to check out stumpthespread.com to see all of our top plays. Hit that thumbs up button and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos, and we will see you guys tomorrow for more NCAA basketball action.